everyone, welcome back to another video. Been working on something over the past week or two that I think will be a fun one today. This one has been fun to dive into, and it's just something I've been thinking about quite a bit over the past, several weeks. And at a high level in the soccer card market, or really any market, when you're thinking about projecting ahead, and so you're making investment decisions today based on not only where things stand today, but also like what you think the market will look like in the future. And that time horizon can be anything from a month, 6 months, or many years. And I think often people are not focused on the very long term, at least in the soccer card market. And one reason for that is that there's just too many things that can happen over, a longer time horizon, that there's too many variables, so it's hard to really control for any of them. But I also think it's a useful exercise to actually think through, like, okay, what could the world look like in 2 years, 4 years, etc. And I saw this quote recently that really got me thinking about, what will the soccer card market look like by the 2026 World Cup? And the quote is here on the screen. It's from the FIFA president via televised remarks a couple months ago, where basically he was talking about the World Cup being in North America, and he said by 2026, soccer or football will be the #1 sport in this part of the world. And I think that's obviously like a pretty bold statement. I mean, obviously in Mexico, that's probably the case, but Canada, you'd think probably hockey. Obviously in the US, you have the big three, American football, basketball, and baseball. But it did get me wondering, like, what would the world look like? What dynamics would be in play if soccer actually did become the #1 sport in the US, and like what would have to happen for soccer to be the #1 sport in the US? And then relatedly, what would the soccer card market look like relative to other sports card markets if soccer was the #1 sport in the US? And so what I'm hoping to do in this presentation is just kind of walk through, I guess, my opinions on that, and sort of break down like why I think certain things would happen if soccer did elevate to be the #1 sport in the United States. So let's consider this for a second. So right now the soccer card market is very focused on the 2022 World Cup. I would say at least like the mainstream soccer card market, and has been for a while. You always hear people talking about, I'm investing for the World Cup, buying players in advance of the World Cup, and either using the World Cup or the build up to it as a hype event to then potentially move out of certain players. But what about thinking a bit longer term and projecting to what the world could look like in 2026 as the United States, soccer becomes bigger and bigger? Who knows what the U.S. men's national team will do in the 2022 World Cup? But, people who follow the U.S. men's team closely, 2022 is always kind of like, hey, hopefully we do well enough to get out of the group stage. But realistically, they're probably not going to make a deep run. They could, but really 2026, where we're going to be playing World Cup matches on home soil, that's where people are really excited, especially with how young the current men's national team is and how they could be really entering their prime right around that 2026 World Cup. So basically, what happens if soccer washes over America like never before? And furthermore, like I mentioned, competitive U.S. men's national team in 2022, maybe they make a deep run, and further development and sky high expectations going into 2026 with the World Cup being played mostly on their home soil. There's also a decreasing attention on other big three sports, just generally, like regardless of soccer, where, I mean, baseball, frankly, is just really boring and is getting pretty stale. Football, you have players getting injured, and obviously a lot of old past players suffering from CTE, and so I think there's just generally a shift happening amongst the youth in America, where more kids are playing soccer than other sports, or at least than they used to years ago. And I think that's you're starting to see that play out in the number of just high quality athletes that play for the men's national team, for the U.S. men's national team. So really, this is just a recipe for soccer entering the cultural mainstream for good. You have better athletes. If they can make some noise, if the U.S. men's national team can make some noise at this year's World Cup, and if they could really carry that momentum into a deep run or high expectations into 2026, things could get pretty crazy. So let's just pretend for a minute that soccer becomes the number one sport in the U.S. I don't necessarily think this is going to happen. I think it's a long ways away. Given that soccer is the most popular sport in the world, it's not out of the realm of possibility. And I would also mention that even in the United States, for other World Cups where we haven't had anywhere near the talent that we have now, the country definitely seems to rally around the U.S. men's national team and the women's national team during the men's and women's World Cup. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that a good showing at World Cups and an exciting team could really, like I said, elevate soccer into the cultural mainstream in the United States. So let's just pretend it does, right? So what happens in the soccer card market? So I'm going to give you 3 predictions that I think would happen if soccer became the number one sport in the US by 2026. So a quick disclaimer, as always, this is not financial advice. This is meant to be fun. It's going to include my opinions and really just meant to be thought-provoking and entertaining. I'm going to discuss some players. They're all just included for comparison purposes. I'm not trying to hype any of them up. I'm not trying to tell you to buy any or sell any or hold any. I'm just trying to demonstrate some of my opinions through the examples of various players from various sports. And so with that, obviously, please do your own research. Also, please excuse any mispronunciations. English is my native language. I'll try my best, but like I said, I'm probably not going to nail everything. And I'm just a random dude on the internet who likes soccer cards, so take whatever I say here with a grain of salt. And with that, let's hop in. So I think the first prediction, if soccer becomes the number one sport in the U.S., is you will see unprecedented interest in U.S. men's national team stars. And what I mean by that is right now, everyone knows Christian Pulisic. He's already pretty hyped. There's a lot, I think, built into his prices. But if soccer was the number one sport, he would be in the Mbappe Haaland territory in terms of just demand and card prices, solely because the U.S. market is the biggest market and drives so much of the sports card hobby. I think his interest in his cards would just be insane. Many people who follow U.S. men's soccer, or even in the sports card market and are getting into soccer cards, they know the likes of Giovanni Reyna, Weston McKennie, Brendan Aronson, Timothy Weah, Tyler Adams, Yunus Musa, and others. And so if and when soccer does become the biggest sport in the United States, these types of players will be in demand. Similar to how quarterbacks are in demand in American football because they're the stars, they're the faces of the franchise, they're the ones that are scoring touchdowns or throwing touchdowns. In the NBA, it's the flashy players who score and have the ball and make a lot of plays. It's going to be the same thing in soccer, because if you think about what would the mainstream soccer card market participant invest in if the U.S. men's team was good and soccer was the number one sport in the U.S., they would be investing in the players scoring goals, the players, involved in the most plays, the players on the pitch when the U.S. is scoring and winning these matches. Some of the players I mentioned above, I'm sure there'll be others, especially by 2026. Any prospect who shows potential, I think, would also be among the most popular soccer prospects, because if you think about it, all it takes is one player to score a big goal, or in World Cup qualifying, a young striker to emerge. We saw it with Ricardo Pepi, and Jordan Pefok in the qualifying for this World Cup. All it's going to take is somebody to score a few goals, and that player, especially if they are a newer prospect or if they're younger, they're going to become one of the hottest prospects in the soccer card market. And I think, just generally speaking, a lot of expectations will be priced in for all of these players. And some of that will be based on actual expectations on the pitch, and some of it will also be heavily influenced by the fact that the U.S. sports card market will drive a lot of interest in this, especially if soccer becomes the number one sport in the U.S. So I'll just give you an example from another sport. So Ja Morant is one of the rising young stars in the NBA. I apologize if you're not into basketball, but this is just meant to be a comparison slide. So Ja Morant is one of the best young stars in the NBA. in 2019, him and Zion Williamson were basically like the two most hyped prospects and really kind of helped the sports card hobby boom. You can see here from GemRate, I have a couple screenshots. So John Morant was a rookie in 2019. He's basically played 3 NBA seasons. He has over 312,000 graded cards, including over 163,000 gems, PSA 10. This is all PSA. He'll have BGS and SGC cards too. If you look at just in the second screenshot here, his main rookie sets, you can see his Panini Prism, which is like the flagship basketball set. He has almost 38,000 cards graded, including over 20,000 PSA 10s, and that's just base. That's not including silvers. That's not including numbered parallels. That's just base PSA 10s, okay? And then you can see in the last screenshot that those base PSA 10s are still selling for over $160. So just, I think if you do the math, it's like over a $3.3 million market cap just on base PSA 10 Prism rookie cards for John Morant. Now that doesn't even factor in all of the other rookie cards he has. So you can imagine, like, what is John Morant's rookie market cap? It's astronomical if you were to add it up. I mean, we're probably talking like tens of millions of dollars, or, you know, probably $10 million. This is just an example of one of the more popular sports in America today, one of the most popular, you know, recent prospects in that sport, and you can see how much money is still being dedicated to his rookie cards today. And I want to say in the peak of the sports card boom, these Panini Prisms were going for upwards of $500. So you can just get a sense of the amount of money and attention that can flock to these types of players. And I wouldn't even call basketball the #1 sport in the U.S., but certainly it's very popular and people are willing to allocate their capital to it. You can only imagine what would happen if, you know, Christian Pulisic's rookie cards, you know, if soccer was the #1 sport in the U.S. So that's just meant to be kind of a comparison of like what, you know, how much money is still flowing into basketball and even base Prism rookie cards today. I mean, that was August 14th. That was yesterday. So how can we take advantage of this first prediction? If we think there's going to be unprecedented demand for U.S. men's national team players, if soccer becomes the #1 sport in the U.S., like, what can we do? So one thing I like to ask myself is, like, when soccer is the biggest sport in America, who will be the most sought after players and which of their cards will be in highest demand? So you kind of have to project forward and think, okay, in 2026, who might star for the U.S., and maybe make a bet on some of those stars. It's probably a lot of the names that I mentioned. It could be some dark horses that we're not, you know, quite aware of yet. But you can probably assume a demand increase in these cards and focus on more of the rare numbered parallels and rookies. I don't think that's anything groundbreaking, but if you just look at how much money is pouring into John Morant's base Prisms, I think projecting that forward and thinking about, like, you know, there's going to be base cards for the U.S. stars that people will probably put money into, but imagine then how much in demand the rare and numbered parallels will be. And I think there's room now to kind of think ahead and try to position yourselves to, you know, to invest in some of those cards that you think might be very valuable in 2026. Now, granted, this is a longer term play, right? This isn't something you're going to be able to flip in a few months, but this is more like thinking long term and sort of preparing yourself for when the market, you know, if the market shifts in that way. And the last thing I would say is, like, don't get overly creative. You don't need to worry about base. Don't focus on niche sets. I mean, you can if you like them, but I mean, if you're really trying to kind of position yourself, focus on the Topps Chromes, the, you know, maybe Panini Mosaics, depending on, you know, just kind of like the flagship sets from Topps and Panini, I think are probably the best way to go. Okay, so now prediction number 2. I think we're going to see massive soccer card production in terms of just total print runs of cards, but also in the number of different sets. And we're kind of already seeing that in soccer, and we're definitely seeing that in other sports. And I think that just continues, especially if soccer is the #1 sport in the U.S. Because look at American football right now. Look at basketball. Look at the print runs, right? It's insane. And if soccer reached that level of mainstream popularity, it would just be even more insane than it is. So here's a couple of charts here that I pulled from the internet. So we're basically already seeing a sharp uptick in print runs across both Panini and Topps. That should be Topps with two P's, not one. It's autocorrect right there. But basically, this first graph above is from Blowout Forums. A user named Messina Cards put this together, basically just estimating Prism base basketball print runs, and this is based on like number of hits per box, odds of hitting certain things, numbers of each parallel, things like that. You can kind of triangulate like what the total print run is just by knowing what's in each box and how rare each parallel is. So you can see, and this is like for a given player. So think of like a given player, this is how many of their base cards they have. So back in like 2013, 14, 15, we were under 10,000. 2016, we were at 12,000. Then that went to 36,000 in 2017, so basically 3x. Then it went to 44,000, which is like not that much bigger, 2017, 2018. Then from 2018 to 2019, which is the year of the Ja Morant base prism that I just showed, it basically 3x'd again. Now I can only imagine, now this is like an more dated chart. I can only imagine what this is now in 2020, 2021, 2022, right? Similarly, this chart below is the base card print runs in the Topps flagship releases. So this is baseball, and you can see again that the Series 1 was around 300,000 in 2018, 2019, closer to 400,000 in 2020, 700,000 in 2021, and almost 1 million in 2022. And that also doesn't even factor in the Series 2 and the update series. So we're talking like base cards going from a total of 3, 4, 5, 700,000 in 2018 to probably at least double that in 2022. I think the number of sets and the total print runs will increase because of increased demand, because we've seen it already in other sports. Topps and Panini have no problem printing more different sets, printing more cards in each set. We've seen checklists that are 300-400 players long in American football. Even Topps Chrome went from 100-person checklist to 200. So we can already kind of see this happening, and it does raise the concern that are we entering a junk wax era for soccer? And it's possible, and I think we're already seeing, even with some of the rookies, Pedri has 250 plus rookie cards. Jude Bellingham has 300 and something rookie cards. I think this is going to make rookie prospecting much more of a gamble, in the sense that there's just going to be so much supply for most given rookies that we're really going to have to be searching for some of the diamonds in the rough to really to find people that are investable. And here's just a couple of examples. So this first screenshot here is the 2021-2022 Topps Chrome Champions League. This is just a list of different parallels. So refractors, ray waves, speckles, star balls, mini diamond, aqua wave, aqua. I mean, you can just see the number of different parallels there. I mean, and if you were to add all these up, I mean, we're talking like, there's multiple of 250s, there's multiple of 199s. I mean, this is like very much manufactured rarity that's not as rare as what it seems. This screenshot here is 2021-22 Mosaic Premier League. You can just see all the different types of both numbered and non-numbered parallels. We have Genesis, orange fluorescent, reactive blue, reactive gold, reactive purple, reactive red, and then red, blue, purple, pink. So it's like, and then last one is Topps Finest Champions League, which just came out. Not quite as big as Topps Chrome, but you can see, vapor waves and prisms and just speckles. It's just, they're adding more and more. And this is the night vision refractor from Topps Chrome, which I actually think is kind of cool looking. But my point is that they're just adding so many different parallels so that they can increase the print runs while still making the chase for some of these, harder to hit cards the same. And I think we're just going to continue to see this, especially if soccer becomes the most popular sport in the United States. I think this is going to get probably almost out of control. So how can we take advantage of this? Well, I would say don't get distracted by shiny new objects. I think some of these parallels are really cool. I personally really like the different lava parallels, gold lava, etc. But I think if we're investing in things and we're buying cards with the hopes of them increasing in value, unless you're playing kind of like more of a short-term raw to grade flip game, I think we just have to focus on the ones with historical relevance: gold, red, green, blue, purple, orange for for Topps Chrome. I think for Mosaic, probably Genesis, the fluorescents that are numbered, just some of the other lower number parallels, because manufactured rarity does not equal actual scarcity, because each of these sets is going to have an of 99 parallel or multiple, and there's going to be how many different sets. So for a given player in a given year, how many of 99 cards will they have? I think in my chat with James the other day, James Cards FC, he mentioned that I guess Trevor Lawrence, who's one of the biggest prospects in American football, has over 1,000 one-of-one rookie cards, which is just, I mean, yeah, they're all different, I suppose, but that's insane. And so you can just imagine like how many of these numbered parallels each player is going to have, given how much they already have today. And the last thing I would say is, like, honestly, base is probably just not investable. I mean, unless you're completing sets or you want to put together full base sets, I just don't know that investing in base cards is really, a winning proposition. Or if it is, you're probably operating on pretty small margins. Okay, my final prediction, and it kind of relates to the first two, but I think there's going to be a massive supply shock for vintage and pre-modern soccer goats. And I'll kind of talk through why I think that is. But I think it relates to the other two predictions, and I think it's something. This is probably the thing that I'm the most bullish about in terms of the future of soccer cards, and it will only be exacerbated by soccer becoming the number one sport in the U.S. in 2026. So, quick economics 101 lesson. So, when we increase demand, all things being equal, that will result in an increase in prices and consumer willingness to pay. So, for example, in this chart here, P1 and Q1, see where D1, the demand, and S1, the supply, intersect right here. That is basically the equilibrium price and quantity for a specific good. So if in this case we're talking about sports cards, this is the market's demand. So this is Topps and Panini's supply, and they're going to produce Q1 number of boxes, and we're going to pay P1 number of prices. You could do the same thing for a specific card, right? But you get the point. This is basically where we are today. Now, if demand increases as a result of an increase in interest in soccer, because soccer is going to be the most popular sport in America, this demand curve will shift up this way. It'll shift to the right. So now it'll become D2. So you can see what results here is there is now a higher equilibrium quantity and a higher price. So the price goes up because people are willing to pay more for the existing supply. Okay, now to combat that, the only way to combat that is companies will increase the amount that they produce. So Topps and Panini will make more. This supply curve, S1, will shift to the right and become S2. And so the new quantity is Q3 here, and you can see it'll be the same equilibrium price as it is today. So basically what happens is as demand increases, these companies will keep shifting their supply so that we'll still be paying $250 a box for Topps Chrome, for example, right? But there's just going to be 3 times the amount of boxes, or some multiple of the amount of boxes. And this is inevitable because the higher prices that we are willing to pay, the more product that Topps and Panini are going to keep putting out in order to meet that demand, because after all, they're running a business and they're trying to make money. So that, to me, that's just sort of like the obvious dynamic of what's going to happen here. But if you think about it, like, this is really only happening with ultra modern cards, ultra modern print runs, because that's really the only supply that these companies have any control over. So vintage and pre-modern supplies are set. Those products have already been made. For better or for worse, there's only so many of them that exist or will ever exist. And then if you add to the fact that Many of them, just from like a condition rarity standpoint, there's only so many that will exist in a good enough condition to get a PSA, 4, 6, 8, whatever. That can't be increased anymore. So I think what you'll see might happen is, as the demand increases for soccer cards as a whole and the supply of ultra modern cards increases, eventually the prices of those will become depressed, and people's focus may start shifting into GOATs, greatest of all times, similar to what we have seen in other sports. We saw this in basketball, we saw this in football, we saw this in baseball. You've probably seen a number of sports card content creators talking about investing in GOATs because GOATs are safe, and it's all the same fundamentals as to why you would invest in a Michael Jordan as you would a Messi or a Pele or etc. Right? So I think there is a potential for a huge supply shock, just given how little supply of vintage and ultra modern cards there was relative to how much supply there will be for ultra modern soccer cards. And I'll get into some more details here. So here's an example from baseball. This is Mickey Mantle. This is his 1952 Topps. You can see from GemRate that there are over 239,000 Mickey Mantle cards graded. The 1952 Topps, which is considered one of his rookie cards, you can see there's 3,558 graded, or sorry, 1,857 graded, only 3 gems, so that's not surprising given how old it is. But you can see here that this PSA 1.5 just sold fixed price 3 days ago for recording this on August 15th. You'll probably see it a little later, but it sold 3 days ago for $45,000. Okay, this card is a Pop 78 with 1,257 higher. So imagine what a PSA 5 or 6 goes for. I think if you saw at the National, there was an SGC 9.5 that people thought was gonna be like the first $10 million sports card. There are 1,857 total of these graded, and you can see many of them are at or above a PSA 1.5. There's probably about 600 PSA 1s, right? That is a ton of cards for that price. Just absolutely insane. And not to mention, Mickey Mantle has a 1951 Bowman with 2,500 graded and a 1952 Bowman with 3,500 graded. Let's move to basketball. Michael Jordan. You can see almost 1 million cards graded by PSA. You can see his 86 Fleer, which is one of the most iconic sports cards in the sports card hobby. 24,000 graded, only 321 gems, which I think gems were going for a couple 100,000 most recently, but a PSA 8. There's 3 of them that sold in the last few months, all for around $7,000 or $8,000. Again, there's 24,000 of these cards. A PSA 8 is a Pop 8,354 with 4,120 higher. So there are over 12,000 Michael Jordan 86 Fleers in PSA 8 grades or higher. So just keep that in mind. And Michael Jordan is, I'll just add, he is undisputably the GOAT of basketball. I mean, there's no one, and this is undisputably his most iconic card. So he doesn't have 100 different rookies. I mean, there's just no one. This is like the guy that you buy in basketball if you are investing in a GOAT. Similarly, Tom Brady in football, almost 200,000 graded by PSA, 73 gems, pretty high gem rate. You can see a list of some of his rookies. He has a number of different rookies. Many of them have thousands graded. He has over 49,000 total rookies with over 8,400 gems. Okay, I have his Bowman Chrome here. That's one of his flagship rookies. You can see Bowman Chrome PSA 9 recently selling for around $4,000. Pop 2028 with 1,120 higher. So again, these are not only pretty massive populations relative to what we'll see in soccer, but this is a lot of money too that people are focusing into the GOATs of these other sports. Now imagine when soccer becomes the most popular sport in America. So this is just some select soccer GOATs. So just pick some of the top people and then some other select guys that you'll see in the top 10, 20 lists of all time. But you can see we have Pele, 6,448 total PSA grades of anything. That's like half of the Michael Jordan PSA 8, 9, 10s. There's only half of that amount of total Pele cards or stickers graded. Diego Maradona, 3,580. Johan Cruyff, 1,524. Beckenbauer, 1,077. Di Stefano, 362. Puskás, 302. Now, I will say that there are SGC and BGS cards and stickers of all these players, yes, but there are also SGC and BGS cards and stickers of all the other players as well. So here we have 6 of the best soccer players of all time, vintage soccer players of all time, and we have 13,290 total PSA graded items, which is just a fraction above the total PSA 8, 9, and 10 Michael Jordan 86 Fleers, which are selling for $45,000. Or sorry, not $45,000, $7,000, my bad. Still, imagine if every single card or sticker from one of these soccer players was selling for $7,000. Not apples to apples, obviously, but just trying to highlight the disparity here in populations of, GOATs in soccer versus GOATs in other sports. And then you can see the gem rate, only 4%. I mean, it's impossible to find gems in some of these cards, which makes PSA 2s, 3s, 4s actually, highly sought after. So just a couple of examples here, not to drive this point home too hard, but I just want to, highlight this. We have the Pele 1958 Alifa. This is his most iconic card. A PSA 1 just sold, 1.5, sorry, just sold for $27,000 a couple of months ago. It's a Pop 7 with 84 higher. A PSA 6, that's a 6. I'm sort of covering it up a little bit there, but that's a 6, sold for $195,000 a couple of months ago. You can see that's a Pop 6 with 25 higher. So very expensive, but you can just see how few of these cards there actually are. This is sort of like the 86 Fleer of vintage soccer, in the sense that it's, the GOAT, one of the GOATs, and the most iconic card. So we have the Cruyff Power X, the 67. This is one of his notable rookies. You can see here, 68 total graded by PSA, no 10s, 1.9. A PSA 2 just sold a month ago for over $3,000. A PSA 7 sold earlier this year for over $33,000. I think PSA 5s are going, around 20K. So again, like, any grade in this card is massive, and there's only 68 of them total graded by PSA. Diego Maradona, the 78 Crack Campeonato, again, 59 total graded. PSA 1 just sold for $1,700. A PSA 6 sold for $37,000. Again, some of these prices are on par or higher with some of the other GOAT prices that we were talking about. However, if you just look at the pop reports, I mean, we're talking like 59 total here. We're not talking about 12,000. I mean, there's just a huge disparity there. And I think over time, especially as more and more people get into the soccer card market, I think this is where their attention will ultimately turn. And, we're looking at vintage cards here, but let's look at Lionel Messi, okay? Messi has over 4,792 graded rookie cards by PSA. 47,000 cards graded total, so like a bit higher. But even his Mega Crack 71 bis PSA 3, PSA 4 recently selling for between $1,200 and $1,800. And I think his PSA 8 now is down to less than $6,000, which, you look at that, so the top row here, there's 554 total of those cards with 20 gems. Compare that to the Michael Jordan PSA 8, 9, 10, which are selling for, a bit higher than Messi, and we basically have, 554 versus 12,000. Again, it's just huge disparities between all the soccer GOATs and the GOATs of other sports. And again, let's just look at Ja Morant one more time, just to drive this home. He has over 20,000 Panini Prism base rookies. Now, Ja Morant's he's not anywhere near a GOAT. He's obviously more of a modern, somebody that people have a lot of interest in from an ultra modern standpoint. but it's just the disparities here. I mean, there's more John Morant base Panini Prism PSA 10 cards, rookie cards, than there are total. Like you could take like the 10 best soccer players of all time and they probably don't have, or like top 10 best vintage players of all time and they won't have this many graded cards. You know, John Morant has almost as many Panini Prism base cards graded as Messi has total cards graded. You know, it's 47,000 to 38,000. It's just wild. I mean, it's just insane. So how can we take advantage of this? I know I'm kind of going on and on. I'll, set that aside. So personally, I think there's an opportunity to build capital through the ultra modern market, and there's a number of ways to do this. You can do raw to grade. You can prospect on players. You can focus on rare, higher end cards. But basically, making money through ultra modern, because that is going to be the most popular market. Anybody that comes in to soccer cards is going to start with ultra modern and then slowly kind of trickle their way into pre-modern and vintage. And so I think there's an opportunity here to participate in that market and then slowly rotate money and rotate profits into the pre-modern and vintage grails because they have capped pop counts. It's possible that somebody in some country will find more of these players' rookie cards, but it's unlikely that there's going to be very many, if any at all. And there's only going to be how many Pele Alifas graded ever. I mean, there's just only so many of them. And at this point, anybody who has one likely has gotten it graded just because of how in demand they would be in a slab. I think we can try to anticipate hype events and use those for short-term exits. So transfers, a player scores a hat trick and all of a sudden everybody's focused on that player. I think just finding opportunities to exit and make profits and then, like I said, rotate profits into pre-modern and vintage. And I just put opportunity cost here is I think as soccer becomes more popular, there's going to be an opportunity cost between buying soccer goats versus buying Michael Jordan versus Tom Brady versus Mickey Mantle, right? And I think over time, as the popularity of soccer grows, the average sports card investor who's putting their money into a Grail card, they're going to slowly start shifting or at least allocating a higher percentage of that money into soccer. And I think we have an opportunity now to try and get ahead of that because we're here and we're in the market and we are, informed market participants that love soccer. And I think there's just a really great opportunity to start collecting vintage and pre-modern Grail type cards. And they don't even have to be rookies. They could be, they could be 5th year cards. They could be 10-year cards. You look at pop counts for all these players. For the most part, they're very, very low. So that's kind of just, I guess that's kind of what I think about that. That's the one I probably feel the most bullish on. And then I'll kind of leave you with this. This is kind of like the last question. So we're already talking about soccer being the most popular sport, but what if the U.S. men's national team actually wins the World Cup, or even makes it to the finals or something? It's not likely, but I think I put this in the Soccer Study Discord. There's a hot takes channel, and I put this in the hot takes channel that I think the U.S. men's national team winning a World Cup is the single greatest thing that could happen to the soccer card market in terms of just broad, general interest, because the American market is massive. It drives so much of the sports card hobby for non-soccer. If the U.S. men's national team was a world, power, it would just completely open the floodgates of capital pouring into soccer cards. For a lot of the reasons that we outline, just in terms of lower pop counts, historically, I think it would just be a massive, massive sea change in just the way that people are looking at the soccer card hobby. And I think it would start with ultra modern stars like Mbappe and Haaland and Messi, Ronaldo, and it would eventually keep trickling into the all-time great players from each era. You think of guys like Ronaldinho and Pele and Maradona and Cruyff and all those guys. So relative to other sports, there's the supply of soccer cards and stickers, especially in pre-modern and vintage, is almost non-existent like we went through. So it's once this sea change starts happening, it's not going to take long before we really see this supply shock in some of these cards, and we'll probably see some insane, You look at a Mickey Mantle going for $9.5 million or whatever, went for $10 million. Imagine what a Pele Alifa PSA 7 would go for in 5 years. It's just insane. So like I said, this is not likely, but I think this would be the perfect storm for the soccer card hobby. I know this was a long one. I'll leave it there for now. Let me know what you think about these predictions. And yeah, feel free to like and comment and subscribe. Thank you if you made it this far. I really, really appreciate it. And looking forward to hearing what you all think. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time.